You're surrounded by soul killers and you don't even know it. They sit across from you at dinner. They text you good morning. They share your bed, your office, your dreams. They smile when they see you coming, and something inside you dies a little more each time. Carl Jung spent his life mapping the human psyche, and what he discovered will disturb you. There are people walking among us who don't just drain your energy or waste your time. They do something far worse. They kill the part of you that makes you human. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are instead of who others need you to be. But he also understood the shadow side, how we project our unconscious darkness onto others and attack what we can't accept in ourselves. What Jung saw was this: the greatest threat to your soul doesn't come from obvious enemies. It comes from the people closest to you, wearing masks of care. Let's pull those masks off. Carl Gustav Jung spent his life charting the forces that move beneath your surface. He named the shadow you disown, the persona you perform, the projections you mistake for truth. He called the lifelong task of becoming yourself individuation, and he warned that the people you keep closest are never just people. They are carriers of patterns. They call parts of you awake, or they drag them into sleep. Jung's danger signal was simple. Every meeting transforms you. Some turn you toward wholeness. Some tilt you toward fragmentation. You don't stay neutral. You never did. What looks like personality is often an unconscious exchange. You hand over your voice to be approved of. You borrow someone's certainty, so you don't have to feel your doubt. You protect another person's comfort and abandon your own center. These 5 types are not cartoon villains. They are familiar shapes your psyche knows too well. If you do not name them, you serve them. If you name them, you can choose. Now you know the map. Let's step into the terrain. The collective conformist. The first soul killer lives inside your social circle, your workplace, your family gatherings. They're the person who says, "That's not how we do things here," every time you try to break free. Picture this. You mention wanting to quit your corporate job to start that creative project. Their face changes. Not angry, not worried, afraid. They lean forward with that concerned voice and say, "But what about security? What will people think?" In Slack channels, they're the first to react with concern emojis when you propose something unconventional. In meetings, they shut down ideas that haven't been tested by the group first. They sound reasonable. They sound caring. But what they're really saying is, "Your dreams make me uncomfortable because they remind me I killed mine." Watch how they operate. You start to notice a pattern. Around them, you feel smaller, quieter. Your voice gets softer when you talk about the things that matter to you. You begin editing yourself before you speak, asking, "Is this acceptable?" Your body always tells the truth. This is how a soul is killed. Not with a knife, with 1,000 small approvals. You don't notice the wound because they call it maturity. If this is hitting you deep, if you're recognizing faces as I describe this, subscribe right now. Because what I'm about to show you gets darker, and you're going to need these insights to survive what's coming. The collective conformist has made a deal with mediocrity. They've traded their authentic self for acceptance, their potential for predictability. And now they need you to make the same trade, because your freedom is a mirror showing them what they've lost. They'll use shame as their weapon. Don't be selfish. Don't be impractical. Don't be different. Each phrase is a nail in the coffin of your individuality. Here's the trap. You think you're being considerate by listening to them. You think you're being mature by accepting their limits. But Jung knew better. He saw that every time you shrink yourself to fit their comfort zone, you're not just compromising, you're committing slow suicide of the soul. You'll recognize them by how they make you feel after you've been around them. Convinced that your inner voice isn't worth listening to, ready to give up before you've even tried. They're everywhere, and they're killing souls one compromise at a time. The projection master. The second soul killer is more insidious because they seem to know you better than you know yourself. They're always pointing out your flaws, your patterns, your problems. They position themselves as your personal therapist and spiritual guide all rolled into one. But here's what Jung discovered. When someone is obsessed with fixing you, they're really trying to fix themselves. Listen to how they talk to you. You always do this. You have serious trust issues. You're addicted to drama. Every criticism is a psychological diagnosis. Every conversation becomes therapy where they're the doctor and you're the patient. In work reviews, they frame feedback as deep psychological insights about your patterns. In DMs, they send articles about the exact issues they think you need to work on. Here's the twisted part. Some of what they say might even be true. You do have patterns, but the projection master isn't interested in helping you grow. They're interested in using your growth as a way to avoid their own. Watch what happens when you try to turn the mirror around. They become furious. I'm just trying to help you. Why are you attacking me? You start walking on eggshells around them. You stop sharing your real thoughts because you know they'll be psychoanalyzed, turned into evidence of your dysfunction. You begin to see yourself through their eyes. Broken, needy, always one breakthrough away from being acceptable. This is soul murder by 1,000 interpretations. You don't heal under a microscope. You harden. They'll use their supposed wisdom as a weapon. Someone needs to tell you the truth. I can see things about you that you can't see. But real wisdom doesn't feel like an assault. Real love doesn't require you to be different than you are. You'll know you're dealing with a projection master by how exhausted you feel after every deep conversation with them, how self-conscious you become about your own thoughts and feelings. They're not helping you become yourself. They're helping you become their version of what a fixed you would look like. The Dream Assassin. The third soul killer appears disguised as wisdom. They're the voice of experience, the practical advisor, the one who's seen it all before. But Jung recognized this type for what they really are. People who have given up on their own dreams and now make it their mission to kill yours. I just don't want you to get your hopes up. Do you know how many people try that and fail? Maybe you should have a backup plan. Every sentence is a small death. You don't notice the funeral because they call it love. In Zoom calls, they're the ones who ask about your realistic timeline and market research. They forward you articles about failed startups and oversaturated industries. Here's how they operate. They take your biggest, brightest vision and systematically dissect it with statistics, worst-case scenarios, and stories of other people who tried and failed. They're not trying to be mean. They genuinely think they're protecting you from disappointment. But Jung understood something they don't. Without the risk of disappointment, there's no possibility of genuine fulfillment. The Dream Assassin has made peace with a smaller life. They've convinced themselves that settling is wisdom, that compromise is maturity, that dreams are for children who don't understand how the world really works. Watch their language carefully. They never say, don't try. They say, be realistic. They never say, give up. They say, be smart about it. But the effect is the same. Your inner fire gets smaller. Your vision gets narrower. You start planning for failure instead of success. You begin to see the world through their eyes, dangerous, limited, unforgiving to anyone who dares to want more than basic survival. Jung knew that the greatest tragedy isn't failing at your dreams. It's never trying because someone convinced you they were impossible. You'll recognize the Dream Assassin by how you feel after talking to them about your future. Smaller, more cautious, less excited about possibilities, and more focused on obstacles. They're stealing your tomorrow, one realistic conversation at a time. The Emotional Vampire. The fourth soul killer doesn't want your blood. They want something more precious, your emotional energy, your capacity for joy, your ability to feel alive in your own life. Jung's work reveals that some people have become so disconnected from their own emotional core that they survive by feeding off the emotions of others. You know this person. They're the one who always has a crisis when you have good news, who gets sick when you're celebrating, who needs urgent support right when you're finally feeling happy. Their timing isn't coincidental, it's tactical. You get a promotion, they text about their depression, you fall in love, they call with a breakdown. In group chats, your exciting announcement gets immediately followed by their emergency that needs everyone's attention. Here's what makes them particularly soul-killing. they're genuinely suffering. Their pain is real. So you feel guilty for wanting boundaries, selfish for protecting your own emotional space. But Jung saw something most people miss. You can't save someone by drowning yourself in their emotional chaos. The emotional vampire has made you responsible for their feelings. When they're upset, you feel obligated to fix it. When they're sad, you feel guilty for being happy. You start editing your own emotions around them. You downplay your successes so they don't feel bad. You hide your happiness so they don't feel jealous. You suppress your own needs because theirs always seem more urgent. This is how they kill your soul, by making your emotional life about them instead of you. They use intimacy as their trap. I thought I could count on you. I can't believe you're being so cold. Every boundary you try to set becomes evidence of your heartlessness. Every moment you spend on your own emotional needs becomes proof that you don't really care about them. You'll recognize you're being emotionally vampired by how drained you feel after being with them, how guilty you feel for having good things happen in your life. They are training you to confuse love with depletion, and in that confusion, your authentic emotional life slowly starves to death. The identity thief. The fifth and most dangerous soul killer doesn't want to change you or fix you or use you. They want to become you. When they can't, they perform you. Jung warned about identification and participation mystique, when boundaries collapse and you are absorbed into another person's persona. The image can feel cannibalistic, but the psychology is enmeshment and inflation. This person studies you. They watch how you dress, what you like, who you spend time with, what makes you unique. Then they slowly begin to absorb these traits into their own identity. At first, it feels flattering. They love your taste in music. They want to try that restaurant you recommended, but then it goes deeper. In meetings, they start using your phrases. On social media, they adopt your aesthetic. They develop the same interests, the same opinions, the same personality quirks that make you who you are. Here's where it gets sinister. They don't just copy you, they improve on you. They take your traits and polish them, perform them more convincingly than you do. Suddenly people are complimenting them on things that originated with you. They're getting credit for your creativity, your insights, your style. But the real damage isn't that they're stealing your thunder, it's that they're stealing your sense of self. When someone else is performing your identity better than you are, you start to question who you really are underneath it all. You begin to feel like a fake, an imposter in your own life. Watch how they operate. They'll pump you for information about your inner world, your creative processes, your private thoughts, not because they care, but because they're mining your psyche for material. Then they'll use that material to construct a better version of you. You start to feel invisible in your own life, like you're watching someone else live your dreams more successfully than you ever could. You'll know you're dealing with an identity thief by how unclear you become about your own preferences, your own voice, your own authentic self when you're around them. They're not just stealing your style, they're stealing your soul's blueprint. Jung spent decades studying the human psyche, and what he discovered should terrify you. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. But these 5 soul killers make consciousness impossible. They turn your relationship with yourself into a battlefield where you're always losing. The collective conformist convinces you that your authentic self is unacceptable. The projection master convinces you that your authentic self is broken. The dream assassin convinces you that your authentic self is impractical. The emotional vampire convinces you that your authentic self is selfish. The identity thief convinces you that your authentic self isn't even yours. Each one kills a different part of your soul, your individuality, your wholeness, your hope, your emotional freedom, your sense of unique identity. Jung knew that individuation, becoming who you really are, is the most important work of a human life. But it's also the most dangerous because it threatens everyone who has chosen to remain unconscious. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Here's what he meant. The people who trigger you the most are showing you the parts of yourself you haven't integrated yet. The collective conformist reveals your own fear of standing out. The projection master shows you your own tendency to avoid self-examination. But here's the twist Jung would want you to understand. recognizing these patterns in others is only the beginning. The real work is recognizing them in yourself. Because you've probably been all 5 of these people to someone else at some point in your life. What happens if you don't learn to recognize these soul killers? Jung was clear about this. You live someone else's life instead of your own. You wake up at 45 and realize you chose your career based on what the collective conformist said was practical, not what your soul was calling you toward. You've spent decades trying to fix the problems the projection master convinced you were broken instead of developing your actual gifts. You never pursued the dreams the dream assassin taught you were impossible. You exhausted yourself emotionally caring for the vampire while neglecting your own needs. You lost track of who you really are because the identity thief made you doubt your own authenticity. This is what Jung called the unlived life. It's not death. It's worse than death. It's existing in a kind of psychological purgatory where you're alive but not living. The unlived life doesn't announce itself with dramatic moments. It creeps in through small compromises, tiny surrenders, gradual accommodations to other people's limitations. One day you realize you can't remember the last time you felt genuinely excited about your future. You can't recall what your own voice sounds like when it's not filtered through other people's expectations. Jung saw patients who had spent their entire lives being who others needed them to be, and by the time they reached his office, they had no idea who they actually were underneath all those roles and masks. The cost of unconsciousness is your soul. Jung knew this. The question is, do you? But here's where Jung's wisdom becomes a weapon you can use to fight back. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes? The soul killers can only operate when you're looking outside yourself for validation, direction, identity, and emotional regulation. The moment you turn inward, their power begins to dissolve. This isn't about becoming selfish or isolated, it's about becoming sovereign in your own psychological territory. When the collective conformist pressures you to conform, you have an internal compass that points toward your authentic path. When the projection master tries to make you their renovation project, you know the difference between helpful feedback and psychological assault. When the dream assassin tries to convince you that your dreams are impossible, you have direct access to your own courage and vision. When the emotional vampire tries to make you responsible for their feelings, you understand that compassion doesn't require self-sacrifice. When the identity thief tries to become you, you're so grounded in your own authentic self that their imitation can't threaten your identity. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming who you actually are instead of who others need you to be. But individuation isn't a destination, it's a practice. Every day you choose between your authentic self and the version of you that keeps everyone else comfortable. Every time you choose authenticity, you strengthen your soul's immune system against these psychological predators. Jung didn't just identify the problem, he gave you the tools to fight back against the collective conformist. Before making any major decision, ask yourself, what would I choose if no one else's opinion mattered? Start small. Choose the restaurant you actually want to go to. Practice saying that doesn't work for me without explaining why. Against the projection master, learn to reflect their projections back to them. When they say, "You always do this," respond with, "That sounds like something you struggle with too." Don't defend yourself against their diagnoses. Against the dream assassin. Become your own dream protector. Stop sharing your biggest visions with people who haven't proven they can hold them safely. Keep a record of your wins, no matter how small, to counter their narrative of inevitable failure. Against the emotional vampire, set energetic boundaries. You can care about someone without being responsible for their emotional state. Practice saying, "I can see you're struggling and I trust you to figure this out." Against the identity thief, keep parts of yourself private. Don't share your creative process or unique perspectives with people who collect identities. Trust your own voice, even when someone else is performing a shinier version of it. Active imagination practice. Take 10 minutes with pen and paper. Ask the soul killer energy to speak. Write its lines, then write yours. Stop when you feel heat rise. Transcendent function. Before big decisions, sit with opposing pulls. safety versus truth, approval versus authenticity, without resolving immediately. Wait for a third, more genuine option to emerge. The key is what Jung called holding the tension of the opposites. You can be kind without being accommodating, strong without being harsh, individual without being isolated. Your authentic self isn't a luxury. It's the only thing that's actually yours. By now you can feel the difference between looking outside and looking in. The soul killers are everywhere. In your family, your workplace, your social circle, maybe even in your mirror. They're not going anywhere. They can't help what they are any more than sharks can help being sharks. But you can help what you become. You can learn to see them coming before they get close enough to do damage. You can choose relationships that nourish your soul instead of draining it. You can stop letting other people's unconsciousness become your imprisonment. The choice is always the same: your authentic self or their comfort, your dreams or their fears, your soul or their approval. Jung spent his life proving that you can't have both. The question isn't whether you'll meet these people. You will. Picture yourself reaching for the door with a hand that finally feels like it belongs to you. The question is whether you'll still be you when you walk away. Tell me in the comments, which of these 5 soul killers do you recognize in your own life, and what's one boundary you need to set to protect yourself?